Okay, so I just passed out exercise 215. We're moving in the direction of still complex surfaces, but we're going to try to make more buildings out of them. So we're going to make a skyscraper today. And then the next two classes after, we're going to deal with kind of creating real environments. And so thus far, everything that you've done is like rendered on a white background, or maybe you put a blue background in or something, but it's very generic. And so we haven't done any sun, we haven't done anything that really ties it to a site. And so we're going to spend a lot more time dealing with those kinds of things, putting clouds in the sky and all that sort of thing. But before we do that, we need something that we can start to work with. So today we're going to work with a surface that makes up a skyscraper. And the idea is how we would go about modifying a building or a general shape into something that looks a little bit more interesting or dynamic. I do this a lot to set you guys up for the 221 studio where you actually design skyscrapers, so that you're kind of thinking in that scale, because the logical step for a lot of you will be to go on to that as you go through your career here. So that's kind of the purpose and why I make it overlap as I do. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do 3-4 skyscrapers that are different so that you can kind of see the basic manipulations, and I'll walk through how I go about manipulating these. But I'm going to start from a basic object. So I'm going to jump back in the perspective view here, and I'm going to work with a basic box, and we'll start at point 0, 0. And I'm going to make this a rectangle, so it's going to be at 100 feet, 200 feet in the base. And the overall height is going to be 600 feet. So I'll type that in, and then we'll switch this into a shaded mode so that we can see the box that I created. So there's a variety of ways of kind of manipulating and working with this particular object. And so I want to kind of show you how I'm going to go about doing it. The first thing that I'm going to work through is a cage edit option. Or actually, I should probably do points on first. So if I select the object and I turn my edit points on, excuse me. All right. There. I should get a few little control points that I can then manipulate. So if I were to move this, for example, it would tip the building. But I can't really get that far. So a cage edit gives me a lot more options. So I'm going to go up to the cage edit tool. It's under transform, cage editing, cage edit. I have two options here. I can create a cage and I can cage edit. Essentially, cage edit is the same thing as creating a cage, but it pushes you right into the editing mode. The create cage is, let me just create the cage, and then I'll go back in and do the edit. So to me, there's not really any reason to create the cage separate from the operation. You might as well just go straight to the cage edit, which is what we'll do. So you guys may remember this a little bit. When we were doing the bridge, we did a cage edit, but we're going to spend a little bit more time really talking through it today. So the first thing that's going to ask me to do is to select the captive objects, which basically means what's inside that I want to manipulate. What are the objects that I want to manipulate? So in this case, it's going to be this rectangle. And once I'm done, I'll hit enter. Then it's going to say set control object, which is if I had a cage that I'd already created, I could pick it as my cage, or I can pick any object that I want. Most likely, you're going to pick a bounding box, which basically make a box around my objects. And so I'll go ahead and click on bounding box. And then the coordinate system world is just fine. That's the default. And then we get to what are called cage points. And this takes a little bit of time to get used to. We have two things. We have a point count in X, Y, and Z, and we have something called a degree in X, Y, and Z. And so let's start simple. Let me also point out that the degree number here will mandate certain points. So if we go down in degree, you always have to have at least one more than your degree in points. So for example, if I change this, let's say I change the X point count to 2, the Y point count to 2, and the Z point count to 2, the degrees have all shifted to 1, 1, and 1. Okay? I can increase the point count and keep the degree at 1, but I always have to have the point count at least one number higher than whatever the degree is. So let's start with a degree 1, 1, and 1, and let's do a point count of 2, 2, and 2. All right, and I'm going to do this many times doing different options so that I can show you how it works. So I'll go ahead and hit enter, and region to edit global, right? And once I do that, I get control points on each of the corners at the top and each of the corners at the bottom. And so now, for example, I could take the top points, I could say rotate, and let's say maybe 15 degrees, and I can get a twist in that object. Okay, very simple, keeps straight lines at each of the corners, no complex curvature. So let's say, and I'll do this again and again here, let's have another rectangle here. This is at 100 feet, comma, 200 feet by 600 feet. Okay, let's go back to that cage edit again. So we'll go up to transform, cage editing, cage edit. There's my captive object. I'm going to pick a bounding box, world, and this time we're going to keep the degree at 1, 1, and 1, but we're going to change the point count to 3, 3, and 3. And I'll go ahead and hit enter, region to edit global, enter. And so we end up with a few more points. So let's go ahead and take the top here and let's rotate that. The same thing in 15 degrees. And let's rotate this at negative 15, right? And so you see that I've kinked that tower, right? I don't know that this is structurally feasible, but you get the idea. But the degree said that this was 1 and 1, which basically means that it's going to maintain a straight line between these points. Okay? If we change the degree now, right? So once again, we'll repeat here. At 100 feet, comma, 200 feet, 600 feet. Okay? Let's go back to that cage edit again. So we'll go transform, cage editing, cage edit. And this time, right, same thing, bounding box, world. When we get to the point count, we're going to change the degree to 2. So the x degree is 2, the y degree is 2, and the z degree is 2. Okay? So the point count's remaining the same at 3, but my degree is now at 2. I'll go ahead and hit enter, region to edit global. So same points. And if I select these and I go to rotate, and let's do it not quite so far. So let's do minus or 7.5 degrees. And let's take this and we'll rotate negative 7.5 degrees. Right? So when it's 2-degree curve, you see how now I have a smooth curve instead of the angular. So by just changing the degree, I'm getting a very different set of curvature. Okay? So if I went back to my object, once again, at 100 feet, comma, 200 feet by 600 feet, right? I can go back to my cage editing, transform, cage edit, cage editing. Same thing, bounding box, world, and I get to this. I could increase the point count to say 4. And 4. Actually, I'm actually going to change the x point count to 2, the y point count to 2, and the z point count to 4. Okay? And my degree, notice it's shifted down to 1 and 1, but then this degree is at 2, which is good. That means I'll get curvature. I'll go ahead and hit enter. One more enter. And so what I did is I divided up into multiple segments. So instead of just 2 segments, now I have 3 segments, and I can start to manipulate those. But I also eliminated the middles because I did an x and y point count of 2. I eliminated the ability to change the middle of this particular shape. So then it would be a matter of, okay, let's take these, and we'll move those over by, we need more than that. Right, so that it's like that, and then we'll take this upper set and we'll rotate, I don't know, maybe minus 5 degrees, and let's take this lower one here and let's rotate this 5 degrees. So we just kinked those a little bit. right? So I can make this a very simple, right, edited shape, but I can add some complexity and some curvature to it, which is the whole idea. Okay? So the purpose today is to get familiar with the cage editing tools. I would stay away from the degree of 3 because it adds a layer of complex curvature that you really don't need at this point. These shapes that I've done so far today are all unrollable surfaces because they're a surface called a ruled surface, which basically means that there are two parallel lines, and when I connect them, there's always a straight line that connects them. Okay? If I have complex curvature, and we're going to get to this one next, so I say at 100 feet, comma, 100 feet by 600 feet, right? If I go back in and I cage edit this one, bounding box, world, oh, that's fine. Let's keep this at 3, and let's change these to 3, and 3, and 2, and 2. All right, and I get these middle points. Let's say I take this and I move this point out like that to create a bulge. Okay? This bulge is not something that I can roll flat because it has curvature in both directions. It's kind of like thinking about an orange peel. When you peel an orange, you can't have a flattened peel without having a bunch of cuts in it. Does that make sense? It's like a globe, right? And so this is a very difficult shape to make if you were going to go laser cut it. These shapes are actually very, very easy to go through and laser cut because they're this ruled surface. So when you get to your assignment, your next assignment, I'm going to ask you to do a ruled surface, which basically means you're going to be limited to these kinds of shapes, not the two-dimensional curvature. For today, if you want to have a bulge or a twist or something, by all means, do a bulge or a twist. I have no problem with it. Okay? But I want you to be aware that that kind of stuff can happen. Okay? And can be much harder to make. So these are the kinds of transformations you're going to be making and playing around with. It's open-ended in terms of what you want this final tower to look like. I've had some good results with people who have decided to say, take two towers and twist them together or intersect them and that sort of thing. So by all means, you're welcome to do that. So maybe it's a tower that's at 100 feet, comma 100 feet by 600 feet, and then next to it, let's go over 50 feet, and then at 50 feet, 100 feet. That was incorrect. All right, so maybe you have something like this, and you cage edit. Oops. Hold on one second. Cage edit. Bounding box, world. Those are fine. And then maybe I'll pull these over, to create some intersection of the two, and then I could cage edit the two together and twist them or something. Okay? The point is, you come up with whatever the shape is that you like. I'm going to stick with something simple for right now. I'll pick this one as my selected object here. We'll move it over. That's fine. We can release it from its cage. All right, so this is the one that I'm going to play around with and actually make my building out of. Okay? So we can take the rest of this stuff, and I can put it on a layer, change object layer, and I'll turn those off so that we're just working with this one piece. Okay, so I have the outer shell of the building, which is the first most important piece. Right? Now I need to actually develop the floors and that sort of thing so I can see how that works. Okay, so I'm moving on into the part 2 section of this. And what I'll do is I'll create a rectangular surface. It's just a rectangular plane, corner to corner, and I'm going to make sure that it is larger than my building. Right? So if I were looking at it in the top view, it's larger than my building. Right? And now I'm going to go ahead and create all of the floors of the building. So this building is going to be 36 floors at 16 feet floor to floor with a base layer or a base lobby level of 24 feet. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to type copy, and I'm going to copy vertically, and I'm going to create the lobby level at 24 feet. So let's go up 24 feet. And I've wound up with two pieces that are 24 feet apart. The rest of the floors here are all going to be at 16 feet. So I'm going to use an array to do this really quickly. So I'm going to type array. I'm going to select my surface. I'll hit enter. Number in the x direction is going to be 1. Number in the y direction is going to be 1. Number in the z direction is going to be 35. And so I'll go ahead and hit enter. And then it's going to ask me for the z spacing or first reference point. So I can, if I were to click on this corner, you can see that I can control how many I'm going to have. Right? If I zoom in, I could have more. But I know that the distance between floors is going to be 16 feet, so I'll type 16 feet. And then I'll hit enter. Oops. Oops. Array, number in x direction 1, z direction 35, reference point 16 feet in that direction. Okay. Now one of the things that happens with the array command is it always gives you a preview so that you can see if you liked it. Right? It looks like I need one more, so I'm going to change my number to 36. So I get one more. There we go. And once I like it, I'll go ahead and hit enter. And it will make all of my floors. Okay? So now I can use my object here to do a trim on all of these pieces. So I'll type trim. And it's usually best to do these in little groups rather than do it all at once because it can crash the computer. There we go. And so now let me start to organize. So I have a shell for my building. So we'll call this skin. And I'm going to change the object layer. And then I have all the individual floors for my building. So we'll call this floor plates. Or floors. Change object layer. Okay, now I'd like there to be ceilings. Right? Because in reality, in a skyscraper, generally there's the floor, and then there's some trusses and mechanical stuff, and then there's the ceiling. Right? So I'm going to put the ceilings in at maybe 12 feet, something like that. So let me go ahead and turn back on the skin. I'll turn off the floors, and I will, again, make a rectangle that's larger than my object. I'm going to move this vertically. Right? So the first one is 24 feet. Plus 12 feet. So I'm going to go up 36 feet to get at the first location of where this ceiling would be. And then it's going to be every 16 feet because, again, those are consistent. So we're going to do another array. Number in the x direction is 1. Number in the y direction is 1. Number in the z direction is, again, 36. I'll go ahead and hit enter. And then z spacing would be 16 feet. I like what I see. I'll go ahead and hit enter. Let's make all of these on a ceiling layer. Change object layer. I always spell it wrong. Yeah, I did. Okay. So ceiling, right? Then I'll take this, and we'll go ahead and do another trim. And we'll trim these off. Perfect. And so now, if I turn on the floors and the ceilings, we can see that I have, let's turn off the skin for a second. We can see that I have all of those established for floors and for ceilings. Right? The reason I put them on separate layers is because I could choose one material for one material for another. Okay? So we also probably need an elevator core that punches through this building. So I'm going to drop a rectangle through this building. And I don't know, let's say at 20 feet, comma 20 feet, or something like that. Again, this is not a class that's about skyscraper design. We're just putting in some approximations here. Make sure that it's taller than my building. something like that. And then let's look down on it. And I'm going to move this so that it ends up inside my building. And in reality, I want to make sure that it passes through all the floors of my building, because my building twists around it. So this is going to be a straight shaft. And let's go ahead and copy that and create a second one. Maybe at this end of the building, something like that. Okay, maybe one's a stair, one's an elevator. I don't know. Maybe we need more than that. Okay, so now I have those two punching through. So once again, I can use these as my trims. Okay, the problem here is that they already have a cap on it, so it's hard to kind of see down through it. So what I'll do is I'm going to type explode, and then I'll delete the top of this, and then I'll join the sides back together. So let me go ahead and join. Perfect. And I'll do the same thing. Explode, delete the top, and then join. So now, if I look at it in the top view, okay, I can use these objects. Oops, wrong ones. I can use these two objects as trims. I'm going to switch into shaded mode so we can kind of see this. And I'll type trim. Oops. And then I'm going to start clicking in here. And it's going to take a little while because I have to get through all 36 floors. So I'm just going to click, 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 click. And before we know it, we get down to the bottom. And then we'll go back and do this one over here. There we go. So we got all the way to the bottom. Okay, now let me go ahead and turn my skin back on. Like this so we can see it. And we'll use the skin to trim off the tops of these corridors. So we'll go to trim, and we'll get rid of this and this. And then these should be on their own. So we'll take this polysurface and this polysurface, we'll put them on their own layer. And we'll call this building core. Okay, so I have building core, I have my floors, I have my wall and my skin. Now it's a matter of assigning some materials to this, right? We can go ahead and load up materials. So I'll go to materials. I'm going to right click and say load material, and I'm going to go to my flash drive, which of course isn't plugged in, and I will assign some materials. Okay, not overly worried. Hold on a second. We'll spend more time next class really working through the materials and the scene and the sky and all the rest of it. But I'll go ahead and open them up anyway. So I'm going to go to V-Ray Materials, and I'm going to pick under glass, there's something called Skyscraper glass. That's the one I'm going to pick. It's a highly reflective glass. So we'll go ahead and load that. And then let me go ahead and load material, and I'm going to load like a concrete for the floors. We'll do a basic concrete for the floors. And we'll load a material. And I'll pick like some kind of a white wall or something for the ceiling. Okay, then I'm going to apply these materials to the layers, right? So I can right-click and say apply material to layer, and we'll say this belongs on the floors. The glass, I'll apply material to layer, belongs on the skin. This belongs, apply material to layer. This is going to belong on the ceilings, and let's also put that under the core. There. All right, so now I need a little bit of light in my scene. So I'm going to create a box to do a basic directional light, as we've done before. And I'll come up here, pick the directional light. We'll start at the end of the vector, and we'll end there. And then I'll get rid of the box. I will make a separate layer for environment. So we'll call this environment. And I'm going to put this on the environment layer. Okay, good. So that's there. I need an infinite plane. So once again, I'll make sure I'm on the environment layer. I'm going to add an infinite plane underneath. There it is. And then, oops, I'll go ahead and give it a render. And we'll have the basic look of this building. Okay? It's not going to be the best because, again, we have a black sky, so we're not reflecting anything. And part of the reason glass looks good is because it reflects stuff. Right? If we look at this glass, we understand that it's glass because it has reflections of you in it. Right? Same thing happens if we're outside. We can tell it's glass because it's reflecting the sky, etc. So what we're going to do next class is we're going to talk about how do we get that part of the system in place. Okay? So for today, this is all you have to do is to create this kind of basic setup with your building. Right? Spend a little bit of time playing around with the cage editing, get something that's unique and interesting to you. And then you're going to make this kind of a rendering, and you're going to post this to the course web site today. Okay? You're more than welcome to do several towers, and so you can decide which one you ultimately like. Okay? Any other questions? No? All right.